The regular season is heating up, new stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Hi guys, quick one before we get into the episode. This episode is sponsored by Zencastr, which is the production suite that I've used from the very beginning of this podcast. And if you're interested in starting your own podcast, hang around at the end of the episode for our 30% discount referral code. Thanks.
So our podcast is called Right and Wrong.
Are these your notes?
These
Are these your notes about what we're going to say?
Anything
Nailed
is
it.
the short answer.
So how many novels did you not finish?
Oh my God, so many.
It was perfect. What's she talking about? This is nonsense.
Ooh, a spicy question. I love it.
This is it, guys. The big secret to getting published is you have to write a good book. You heard it here first. Hello, and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. I'm Jamie, and today I'm in great company with Amber Caraveo of the Skylark Literary Agency. Hi, Amber. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Jamie. Nice to be here.
Well, thanks for coming. It's so nice to have you. I've already had one half of
Yes.
I was lucky enough to have Joanna on the podcast a while ago. We talked about the two of you creating Skylark. But going back before then, I'd love to hear sort of your side of where publishing started for you, because am I right in thinking you came from an editorial background?
Yes, that's right. So for me, publishing started really with working partners. So I was part of the working partners team. Working partners, for those of your listeners who may not know already, are a packager, basically, which means they come up with ideas for books, typically series fiction, and they create the storylines and they create the concept, and then they find writers to work with to actually write up those storylines into books. And my time at Working Partners, we did lots of wonderful series. Rainbow Magic was a big one that I developed and ran for many years. Also, other great series that people will probably be familiar with but may not know are Working Partners series. So Animal Arc is a good example. Rainbow Magic Warriors, Warrior Cats is another one. Beast Quest is another one. Heartland, which was made into a TV series. The Lady Grace Mysteries, which is a Tudor mystery series. Lots and lots of amazing, wonderful series that Working Partners created and then work with writers to turn into books, which they then sell to publishers, and the publishers publish them in the usual way. And I worked with Working Partners for many happy years, creating books. And then I was headhunted to go to Random House Children's Books as a commissioning editor there. And I was there for several years before moving on to Orion. And I was the editorial director of Orion Children's Books, which was a marvellous list, quite a literary award-winning list. And that was lovely. We had great authors like Liz Kessler, Holly Black, Marcus Sedgwick, Caroline Lawrence. I mean, a wonderful, wonderful stable of just marvellous award-winning authors. And I was with Orion for about 5 years. And then, as you probably heard from Joanna, I really wanted to set up something of my own. And I talked to Jo about this, the idea of starting an agency where we could work directly with authors, because when you're working for the big corporate publishers, you get higher and higher up the ladder and you get further and further removed from the authors. You know, it becomes all about strategy and budgets and profit and loss and mapping out the list for the year ahead or the couple of years ahead. And you aren't working so directly with the authors and their books. And I really missed that. So Joe and I decided to set up Skylark and get back to working directly with authors again.
Oh, that's really nice. I mean, and that's the same in so many careers, where the higher up you get, the sort of further you get from the creation or the product of whatever the industry is.
Yeah, the bit that you liked in the first place, right?
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Made you do it, you know. So, yes, I think that is very common. And there are, you know, I am not the first editor to, you know, turn into an agent. You know, lots of publishers do at some point decide they want a bit more freedom and, you know, set up an agency, as we have done. And it's quite nice. It puts us in a good position because, of course, we've worked now on both sides of the spectrum. We're poacher turned gamekeeper, really, because we've worked with the publishers, we've negotiated with agents as a publisher, trying to get the best deal for the publisher. And now we've simply sort of jumped the fence and we're now working for the authors, trying to get the best deal we can from the publisher. You know, so it's a good position, really. We kind of know the ins and outs and, you know, we know the tricks of the trade.
Because I imagine as in your time as a commissioning editor and presumably as editorial director, so much of that time is spent sort of meeting with agents and receiving pitches about authors and then choosing which books the publisher takes on.
Yes, absolutely. That's a huge amount of your time and really important. And you're liaising with agents all the time because you're either liaising with them in order to find great material and find great authors in the first place, or you're liaising with them in contracts, you know, in negotiations.
Yeah.
So we worked with loads of agents and most of them, I mean, publishing, especially children's publishing, is a lovely industry. Most people in publishing are just really a joy to work with, lovely people. We're very lucky to work in this industry. And, you know, we really enjoyed working with the agents and most of them were absolutely fantastic. But as with any industry, there are the people that you think are doing a better job than others. And we felt that as agents, we could sort of set up Skylark to be, you know, to steal from Carlsberg, the best agency in the world. That's what we set out to be for our authors. You know, we wanted to find new talent. We wanted to work predominantly with up and coming new authors that didn't have the support and, you know, nurture that new talent for children, to get great books into the hands of children. And so we set out to be the best agency that we could possibly be for an author. That was our goal. And I hope, you know, that is what we've managed to achieve. I think it is. I think our authors are they seem very happy, which is how we like them to be. We work very hard to keep them happy. I think we do a good job. We know what our publishing colleagues need and want. So we work very closely with our authors to make sure that their manuscripts are in great shape so that when they go to the publishers, they have the best possible chance of being picked up, because the editors can immediately see that this is a potential book, that this is in great shape, that they don't have to do too much editorial work themselves to get it where it needs to be. So that's a great bonus that we can bring to our authors. And, you know, we work very hard to adjust our style of working to suit them. We are very bespoke as an agency, and we work with our authors in the way that suits them best. So that's not the same for every author. You know, it varies depending on, you know, some of them like lots of hand holding and lots of discussions and lots of sort of advice and nurturing, and others, you know, just want to be left alone to get on with it quietly in their own way. And we're very happy to work with them either way.
Amazing. I mean, I know a handful of people who are signed with you or Joanna, and they all do seem very happy. So
glad to hear it. That's reassuring. Yeah, we do try very hard, and we have quite a small. We don't take on huge numbers. We're a small agency, deliberately so. We're aiming to be the best, not the biggest. So we deliberately have stayed small. We take on only the authors that we really feel are the very best. I mean, we are selling to our former colleagues, the people that we used to work with when we were publishers ourselves. So we're very conscious that we want them to be impressed by the work that we send them. We want them to jump on it and read it quickly when it comes to them. And so we have a reputation to keep up. So we only sign authors that we really think are the best of the best and we really feel have a career ahead of them. And we're proud, really proud of all our authors and proud to sell them into the publishers.
Yeah. I mean, the two of you, between you, have so much experience on the other side of that fence. And coming from the editorial side, the publishing side, do you think that you're more hands-on with editing maybe than other agents?
I guess we probably are. Yes, I think so. Obviously, we don't know the ins and outs of how every other agency works, but certainly the feedback that we get from authors is that we do tend to be a bit more editorial, and I think that's inevitable given our background. There are definitely other agencies. There are other agencies run by former editors like ourselves. I'm quite sure they probably do quite a lot of editorial work. And then there are other agencies who maybe haven't been editors, but obviously they've been working in the industry a long time. And I think they, edit as well. I think most agencies probably do some work with their authors before sending out. But I think that's something we probably do more of. It's very hard once you've been an editor to kind of turn that off.
Yes, I can imagine.
And we enjoy it. That's working with the authors, helping them brainstorm ideas, helping them polish and fine tune those ideas is something that we've always done. And I've always done. I mean, I loved working partners because it gave me that opportunity to be really creative with the authors. And I think that's something that is always going to be dear to my heart. So, that editorial side of things is quite a big thing for us.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the role of an agent has changed over, the last few decades where editorial is a huge part of being an agent now, whereas I think historically it wasn't as big a part.
I would agree with that completely. I think editors also have less time for editing now. They tend to be very, very overworked, basically, overstretched, and they love their jobs, most of them. I mean, just as Joanna and I did, but, there's only so much you can do in a day. And I think increasingly, if a book is in really great shape when it comes to them, that makes their life easier. They can sell it more easily to their colleagues, to the other teams in-house, the rights team, the marketing team, the sales team. It's much easier if they're showing them a manuscript that's already tip-top. It's easier to get those other teams on board and to get the book through the acquisition process in-house. And then also when they come to edit the book, there's not quite so much work for them to have to do. So I think it makes their lives easier. And increasingly, as editors become, more and more stretched, agents are having to take up some of that editorial work.
Yeah.
And, that suits us because, that's what we love. That's what we love doing. And we are editors at heart. So we have no problem with that. But anything, we can do to help our authors and to help make a sale and to help get their books published and into children's hands, that's our job. That's what we want to do.
Yes, exactly. Figuring out what needs to happen and then providing assistance where it's needed.
Yes.
So talking about the processes, and this is something that it's always interesting to me. I always ask every agent that comes on is submissions. You're currently open to submissions?
Yes. Yeah.
Open to and the submission package at Skylark. And I talked about this at length with Joanna because it's a cover letter, a synopsis, and then the full manuscript.
Yes.
Which is an anomaly, I think, in the industry. I don't know if there's any other agencies.
Yes, I think basically, we are a reasonably new agency. Lots of agencies were established many, many years ago, and in a time when people were sending paper manuscripts.
Yeah.
And, you can't ask for I mean, imagine the trees, that would be lost. If everybody was sending out their full manuscript to every agent. I mean, every agent would be buried under a pile of paper for a start. And also it would be incredibly wasteful. And it wasn't hugely necessary because agents would read the first 3 chapters.
Yeah.
And if they wanted, if they felt there was real potential there, they would request the full, and then the author would send them, a pile of paper and send the full manuscript. But nowadays, we're all working digitally, online through email. So sending a full manuscript is at the click of a button. You're not having to send a pile of paper. We are not, completely buried under mountains of manuscripts. So it makes sense to us to simply request the full from the start. That way, we are not reading 3 chapters, getting enthralled, wanting to read more, can't because we've only got the 3 chapters, having to go back to the author and request the full. Then we have to wait for them to send us the full manuscript. Meanwhile, we may well move on to something else to read in the meantime, by which point, when we get the full manuscript, we've then lost momentum on that script, moved on to something else, and it can be quite difficult to get your head back in the zone and get back into it. We just find it's much easier to ask for the full manuscript up front. That way, if we like what we're reading, we can simply forge ahead, keep going, get to the end, and make an informed decision. Also, it's useful to have a full manuscript to flick through, to maybe sometimes jump to the end. When you're considering a manuscript as an agent and considering it as a business proposition, it's useful to be able to flick through the whole thing, jump to the end. How has the author wrapped this up? How are they handling their subject? How are they handling their plot? And it's very hard. You can't tell that from just 3 chapters alone. So to have a full manuscript from the outset is hugely beneficial to us and very easy nowadays because of the nature of email and attachments.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes sense. I mean, Joanna had me convinced as well. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if it became a much more common thing across all the different agencies in the not so distant future, because it does just make sense. It's also good, I think, for you as agents to know how serious an author is, because I'm sure you must have experienced before where an author has sent you 3 chapters, you ask for the full manuscript and are told that, oh, actually it doesn't exist yet.
Yes. and that avoids that, because we're asking for the full. So they've got to be ready. We don't want to read 3 chapters and then have to wait a year for them to finish the manuscript. That's absolutely not how the publishing industry operates. So it's really useful to have the full, and then we know they're ready, and we can crack on and make progress. So I don't know, maybe it will become the norm. I don't know. I think the system is working for others, the way they have it now, and they're happy. But we've found that this works very well for us.
Yeah. Well, that's the main thing. As with all things in publishing, especially, everyone does it their own way and has their own way that they wish to do it. So you just have to find out what works for you. So once you open up a submission, you've got the full manuscript, the cover letter, the synopsis. What order do you approach each of those parts, and where do you attribute the most weight?
The most weight by many orders of magnitude goes to the manuscript. So I would start by reading the cover email, and then I will immediately open the manuscript and dip into the start. And if it grabs me straight away, then that's a really great sign, and it will go, higher up the list, as it were, on my reading pile. So I think that's true for many, many editors as well. When we send to editors submissions, I know that they sneakily kind of take a quick look when it first comes in. And then if they really like it and it engages them immediately, they will keep reading and read it all the quicker. So this is why we often stress that a great opening is such a benefit to your manuscript. If you can open with something really exciting, different, surprising, that hasn't been done before, and really make your reader sit up and take notice, that's a huge winning sort of tick in the box for your manuscript. So that's where I start. I read the covering email, I dive into the manuscript, and if I like it and I think the writing looks strong, then it goes, onto the reading pile for proper reading and thorough consideration. If I'm reading through a manuscript and I get quite a long way in and I'm still really enjoying it, that's often when I'll turn to the synopsis, sometimes to see where is this going. Because sometimes if I have an idea of where it's going and what's going to happen at the end, I can more easily judge how it's developing and whether the pacing's right and whether it feels like it's being handled well and heading in the right direction. So I find synopses most useful for that, for giving me a sense of how the author envisages the overarching story of the book and, where we're going to end up. So the synopsis is very useful, but it tends to be more useful when I'm further on and I already know that I like the writing.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Is it more of a sort of time saver where you've read enough that you're thinking this is good?
Yes.
Can they stick the landing?
Yes.
In which case, there's a further conversation to happen here.
Yeah, I exactly. I think that's exactly how I use it. It never will take the place of reading the book, because even if you read the synopsis and think, oh yes, this is really interesting, and it looks like they've got a really good resolution at the end, you still have to read it, right? You still have to see that they can deliver it actually in writing in the story itself.
Yeah.
But it is useful for giving me a sense of what I'm looking for, what I'm expecting. But it's not, if I don't love the writing, if I don't, start the manuscript and really love what I'm reading, then I wouldn't turn to the synopsis. The manuscript is by far and away the most important part of any submission, and the strength of the writing and the ability of the author to suck you in as a reader and really engage you. That's that black art. That's that thing that every agent is looking for.
Yeah, the X factor, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, with the cover letter, how much time do you give to the cover letter? What are you sort of really looking for when you look at it?
Not too much. I mean, I don't want a massively long cover letter, but I do like it to give me a sense of who the author is.
Okay.
The ones where we sometimes get where they just say, here's my manuscript, I'd love for you to consider it, it's called this, thank you, bye-bye. That's lovely, and we do still consider it, of course, and doesn't change how we feel about the manuscript, but it's nice to get a sense of the author. I do prefer the covering emails where they say, my name's Susan and I live wherever, and I have 3 dogs and 2 cats and 3 goats and 10 horses, and and I get a little bit of a sense of who they are and what they like and what they love, and what their passions are, and maybe I love traveling around the world, or I like this, that, or the other. Anything, especially anything quirky about them, something that gives you a sense that you're reading a book by a real person. Yeah. Because as an agent, we see so many books, and every one of those books is written by somebody. Someone has put an immense amount of time and effort into creating this work of art. And for me, I really like to get a sense of the person behind the book. So what I really look for in a covering email is a brief kind of elevator pitch of the book itself, the title, what age group it's for, and that kind of 2 or 3 line pitch that tells me what to expect, what kind of read is this going to be, and then a paragraph about them. And that's it, really. That's what I want. And obviously, it's really useful if they do have any previous writing experience, if they've been published before, if they've been shortlisted in any competitions, or if they're a member of the SCBWI, anything like that. That's useful for us to know as well. So that's worth including.
Yeah, just dropping that in a line or two at the end.
Exactly.
But yeah, I see what you mean, because even with, when I come to a book, a lot of the time I will buy a book because of an interview that I heard or saw or read about something about an author will inspire me to subsequently buy a book by that author, because I feel like I have gotten a sense of them.
Yes.
And I would like to experience the sort of fantastical part of that sense, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, or whatever it is, the
Yes.
sort of the concise, dramatized, focused version, the diamond, I guess, of their creation.
Yes, and I think that's true for a lot of people. I think if you engage with the author and invest in the author, it makes you that much more interested in what they've written, in what their creative output is. And obviously, as I say, by far and away, at the end of the day, the most important thing is the manuscript. If the manuscript is pure gold, we will approach the author. We'll find out more about them if we need to. So it doesn't matter. You don't need to worry as an author about crafting a beautiful covering email. That's not important. Worry about crafting your manuscript. That's the really important bit. And then the covering email is literally to give us some information. And as I say, a little bit of a sense of who you are. So that we do feel like we are talking to and engaging with real people.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah.
It feels like you've been approached on purpose and not just put in a blanket sort of email.
Yeah, because there are people as well. I mean, we do get quite a lot of submissions from people who have clearly just blanketed every age. I mean, we get, for example, as you know, we are a specialist children's and YA agency. So we don't do adult books. And we've been sent porn. We've been sent all kinds of material that's totally inappropriate for our agency. Yeah. So, it is good, and it is always pleasing when it's clear that an author has taken the time to look at our website, to know who we are, to check out our submission guidelines, and to choose to submit specifically to us, and not just, every agent in the known universe.
Yes. Always good to know that you've been researched and identified, and you're not just a name on a list.
Yeah.
And then, so that's some of the sort of the good parts of submissions, some of the nice stuff. What are there any things that you sometimes see in either a cover letter or the submission itself, the manuscript, that instantly sort of make you think, I don't know about this?
That's a really good question. There are a few things. I think we all have our little pet hates.
Yeah.
They wouldn't stop me. They wouldn't make me go, oh, that's it, I'm never, close the book, walk away.
Yeah.
But they just sort of ring little alarm bells. For me, I think one of those things is if an author sends me a middle grade manuscript, for example, and says, oh, here's my manuscript. It's for readers of, 9 to 12. And it's, I don't know, 70,000 words long.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm immediately thinking that's too long. That's too long for this age group.
Yeah.
That's not to say that there has never been a book of that length written for that age group. I mean, J.K. Rowling,
I was about to say.
and some others, there are those people who can absolutely kind of break the rules. And so that is why I would still look at the manuscript and read the book and judge the writing and everything else, But generally speaking, publishers are looking for a middle grade manuscript to be between sort of 40 and 55,000 words long, very roughly. So if something is coming in at 65, 70,000 words and the author is saying it's middle grade, that makes me question how well they know the market, how familiar they are with their readers, also how much control they have over their writing, because they're running quite long there. So it just makes me think, okay, there are some things I need to look out for here, some things I need to consider. But, some authors just are brilliant authors and they do write long, and then we maybe work with them to cut it down and to make it, the perfect length. Some books just do need to be that long. But when you're writing long like that, you do need to consider the fact that you are giving your book another obstacle. That's another obstacle that you're writing, that the brilliance of your writing and your story then need to overcome, if that makes sense.
Yes.
You have to remember, one of the things you really need to remember is that every agent and every editor is looking for foreign rights potential, which means translation. And as soon as your book is translated into almost any other country in the world, in any other language, in the world, it gets longer. So if it's already too long, already on the long side, publishers have real trouble selling that book in translation, because they know that for Germany, for example, it's going to be, even longer. And so for a young reader, it's going to look like even more of a doorstop, and it's going to be even more daunting to a young reader. So publishers have that in mind. And also translation costs, the longer the book, the greater the translation costs. Mm-hmm. So that can put foreign publishers off as well. So as an agent, as an editor in a publishing house, you are always looking for the books to be a suitable length, for the reader, mainly for the reader, because you want the reader to love it and to engage with it and not to be daunted by it, but also for those foreign readers and foreign publishers, because editors want foreign rights sales. That those are one of the things that helps to make their book profitable.
Yeah.
So it's an important consideration. So length is certainly something that I look at. Also, I like books that open in a different way. A lot of children's books open with our protagonist maybe being bullied at school, or running away from bullies, or facing bullies in some way. That's been done a lot. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's an immediate sort of slight turn off. I mean, some people do it very well. And again, if it's well done, and if I like the story and I like the concept, it wouldn't stop me from considering that manuscript for representation. But it does, I think it gives all of us a little bit of a sense of ennui, because we've just seen it done so many times. So I do like it when an author, is aware of other books, other things that are on the market, common tropes, common cliches, and has clearly, striven to avoid those.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Do you think it is important then for people querying and submitting their work to not only just look at what the sort of average word count is for whatever genre they're doing, but also look at the sort of market as a whole and do a bit of market research before they start sending their submissions out?
Absolutely. I mean, any other industry, you need to know your field. If you're hoping to be an author and you're hoping to be published, you absolutely need to know the market. You need to know what's there for readers, the sort of readers that you think and hope will read your book. What are they reading at the moment? Whose books are they buying? What's doing really well? That's not to say you want to duplicate that, far from it. You want to write something fresh and new, but you need to be aware of what's doing really well in the market. What's suitable for your reader in terms of tone, length, pace, style, what perspectives can you use effectively for different age groups. So there's a lot of things about the market. Publishers will expect you to have a good awareness of the market. So absolutely, the best thing that you can do as a budding writer is to read anything and everything that is already on the market, and really get a sense for what the market is like now. I mean, the market for children's books has never been better. I mean, we have brilliant books now. I mean, the competition, in some, there's pros and cons here. So many people want to write. There are so many authors that it does make it very competitive, and it does make it difficult for you to get your book noticed. But it also means that we have books for children now that are better than ever, because that competition means that, hopefully the cream rises to the top. And I still firmly believe that great writing will win through. So if you're a new, unheard of author, it doesn't matter. If you're writing great books, and you are really talented, I do believe that will win through. At the end of the day, agents and publishers, we need authors. This is what makes the publishing world go round, is the authors. We need them and their work. And I do believe that great books in the end win out.
Yes. And that ties in nicely with the sentiment that one of the great things about writing is that you don't really need anything to start doing it. A pen and paper, a computer with Word, your phone.
Yes.
You can just start writing wherever you are, which is wonderful.
Absolutely. And everyone is looking for new, original, unique voices, who have something exciting to say. And that doesn't need to be the same as everyone else. We all do want things that are fresh and different. But, it absolutely makes sense to have an awareness of the market and what you're aiming at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good, and there's lots of ways you can get that. There's lots of newsletters, there's lots of communities that share these kinds of things. So you can just sort of, without having to do too much of your own sort of detective work, you can find places that have already put this all together for you.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a blog, the Skylark blog on our website, and we often talk about the kind of issues that we've been discussing, like word length, what's suitable word count for different age groups. We did a blog post about that. So if you go back through our old blog posts, you'll find all sorts of useful, hopefully, information about things like word counts, perspective, the book fairs. People ask us about the book fairs. We did a blog post about those, about how to cope with feedback, about waiting times in publishing, all sorts of things like that people often ask about, or that writers often struggle with. There's a lot of waiting around in publishing. And I think that writers sometimes, that's hard, right? When you're on your own at home, waiting for somebody to get back to you out of the ether, I think it's really difficult. And we talk about all of those kinds of issues. And writing groups, like the SCBWI, which is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, they're great. That gives you a sense of community. Twitter, Instagram, the socials, they can help to foster a bit of a sense of community between authors. And Golden Egg, the Golden Egg Academy, they do lovely work with authors. So there are lots of groups out there. And the other thing is, of course, I think if you are writing for children, any editor, any agent would expect you to be reading children's books. We expect you to be experts in your field. Mm-hmm. If you're only reading adult material, adult books, there's no way that you can expect to write a super successful novel for kids. You need to be in tune with the market, with what kids are reading nowadays. It's not enough to be writing for children, but reading for grown-ups,
Yes. Yeah, no, exactly. And so Skylark, representing children's authors from middle grade up to YA, is that right?
A bit younger. We do 5-year-olds.
Okay.
Early readers, I would say, early reader chapter books, all the way up to YA crossover. So yes, that's our heartland. So everything from sort of 5 to 25, I suppose.
Yes.
That's our heartland, and we will consider anything within those parameters. That we think kids might get excited about. But we are actively looking. So, please do, share your work with us.
Yes. And we're halfway through 2022 now.
Yes.
Are there any particular stories or character types that you are specifically looking to add to your list this year?
I don't think so particularly. We are quite eclectic. We draw authors and stories from everywhere, all over, wherever we find them. And all we really want is great writing, brilliant writing, which is an absolute talent. And we are looking for those rare, talented authors who just have that ability, that X factor that you mentioned earlier, where they put pen to paper and something amazing comes out. That's more than just telling a story, that's telling a story in a really unique, enthralling, mesmerizing way, whether that's through their own authorial style or whether that's through the voice of their character. And that's what we're really looking for. Having said that, I would love to find some more UK homegrown YA. A lot of YA that's on the market at the moment is American. American authors seem to write that very glossy YA very, very well. And it's doing very well for them. But it would be great. I know that publishers would like to find more UK authors writing YA. So I'd love to find some more homegrown YA. I love an unreliable narrator. And that's more common, I would say, in YA than for any other age group for obvious reasons. I love a good mystery, so YA mysteries. I'd love a good romance. So a good YA mystery or a YA romance, or dare I suggest it, both, all of the above would be sensational. So I would say that's the big thing on my wish list at the moment. A great YA, something high concept, something that somehow feels like it hasn't been done to death. But yes, romance or mystery, preferably contemporary. But I do love a bit of magic and historical as well. So I'd be very open to any of that. But other than that, I love middle grade books. That's the heartland of children's publishing. So we are always open and keen to see middle grade. And just anybody who's got something exciting and a bit different to share with us is always welcome.
Awesome. Well, lots to think about there, and hopefully a few people listening will be excited if their manuscript fits the bill. And that brings us on to the final question, which, as always, is, Amber, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book would you take?
Oh, this is such a difficult question. I don't know. I've really agonized over this. I think one of my all-time favourite children's books is a book by Diana Wynne-Jones called Fire and Hemlock. And that really spoke to me when I read it when I was younger. And I reread it as a grown-up, and it still somehow really spoke to me. And I just love the way in that book she has married contemporary reality with fantasy, with fable, with folktale and legend. She does it absolutely brilliantly. And I love books that do that. I love the marriage of reality with legend, with folktale. And that sense that it gives you that somehow folktales and legend might be true, and I've never lost that sense of wonder and that sense of possibility that maybe magic is real, maybe, legends and folk tales and the fae folk and all of these wonderful things are true. So for me, Fire and Hemlock is right up there. But I would also, the adult side of me would love to take a Jane Austen book as well, because I do love her. And I always come back to her, especially in times of anxiety or trouble. I do love to read Jane Austen.
Yeah. She's always a winner, always a winning choice, Jane Austen.
Yeah, she's just a genius author. I love historical novels. I love reading about the period, and she is second to none. So both, completely couldn't be more different, those two authors and those two choices. But I think they're both really vitally important to our literary heritage in different ways. And for me, those are the sort of two ends of the spectrum, and the two books that I find really powerful, and that I would love to have with me on a desert island.
Well, that's great. Those are, any Jane Austen's great, but excellent choices all around.
If I had to pick a Jane Austen, I think it would be Emma.
Okay, yeah. There's so many to choose from.
But every book she wrote was a winner for me. But I think I have a soft spot in my heart for Emma because she's such a very fallible heroine, and I love her, and I love that about her. So that would be the one for me. But it was so difficult, so many great books. I really struggled with that question, as you can probably tell. But yes, anybody who's writing anything like Fire and Hemlock, for kids now, send it my way. Send it my way, please.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Amber, and sharing your experience and your kind of thoughts and feelings about the world of publishing and being an agent. It's been really great chatting with you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Jamie. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I hope that something somewhere in all of that proves useful, your listeners, and also inspiring and inspires them to reach out to Skylark, because I would love to see their work.
Yes, indeed. And for everyone listening, if you do want to keep up with what Amber is doing, you can follow her on Twitter at Amber Caraveo, which is AmberCaraveo. You can follow Skylark at Skylark Lit on Twitter. If you do want to submit, go over to the website, look at all the submission guidelines. You can also find Joanna on there as well. If you want to hear more from Joanna, go back to the episode where she was on the podcast. And to make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow us on Twitter at Right and Wrong UK or on Instagram at Right and Wrong Podcast. You can also find us on Facebook. Thanks again to Amber, and thanks to everybody listening. We'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks for hanging around until the end. If you're interested in starting your own podcast but aren't really sure what that looks like, I can't recommend Zencastr enough. It's so simple to host, record, and download your podcast with, and it even has a built-in transcription AI. It functions entirely in the internet browser, which means all your guests have to do is click on a link and they'll be brought into the conversation. If you click on the link in the description, you'll get 30% off the first 3 months. All you have to do is click on the link in the description. Thanks again for supporting the show, and we'll see you in the next episode.